Hi, this is Catra Corbett, and welcome to episode 274 of the Cultra podcast.
From the belly of the Beast Coast, Glastonbury, Connecticut, this is the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. We talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails that most normal people don't care about. The language we use is fucking explicit and raw like the trails we run on. So don't listen with your kids! Cultra is brought to you by our Patreons and supporters, and we are 112% listener supported, and support is good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. I'm your host, Art Byram, and I'm joined by Cultra crew member Celeste Fong, a ding dong.
Good morning, kids.
Hey, Celeste, just to confirm, you did hear the music, right?
Yeah, I heard the music.
That's
you
amazing,
played.
Right?
I just wasn't dancing. I'm like still in like cooking dinner mode and
yeah. And I guess as everybody heard, we have a special guest tonight, Catra Corbett. So, Catra, welcome, Catra to Cultra.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to say that 5 times fast.
That's the truth. I have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to do this. So, so I thought that I'd start by giving just a quick introduction. I think certainly most of our listeners know who you are, or have certainly seen you around one way or the other. So Catra has like a long story, and somebody that I've followed on social media for a long time. She's an author. She has proven that small dogs can run long distances. You were also the first woman to run 100 miles.
The first American woman. Yeah, there was one other woman from Canada that was the first woman to do it. So I was the first American woman.
Very good. All right. And besides that, there's a lot of famous people in the world, I suppose. But there's not many people who are as famous as you are and as positive as you are. So,
why, thank you.
Yeah, I think
try my best.
Yeah, you like really put it out there as a representative of the trail running community, and not just I think that when things are good, you share that, and when things are shitty, you kind of like, you know what, you let people know how you're feeling and kind of keep it real with people.
Yes, I do, because we're all human, and it's like that's where most people could relate. It's like they see everything on social media, and you're like, what a wonderful life everybody's having. But you got to show the struggles too, so people can relate to you more. They know you're real. You're not like fake and pretending to be, because so many people do that on there.
Yes.
And maybe for whatever reasons they can't show a certain side of what they're going through. Mm-hmm. But I like to keep it real, because I'm all about helping others, making them feel like they're not alone if they're struggling. Yes.
So I thought, if it's all right, I'd like to go back to the very beginning of your story. I always like to, I think that people can go on social media and see what you're doing today, mm-hmm. All the great ultra running things you're doing, and the fun and the positive light that you are. But it's also to give that life and that light some context. I think it's important to kind of take a look back on where we all came from. So
exactly.
Maybe you can tell us, where were you born?
I was born in Fremont, California, which is in the Bay Area. It's kind of maybe about 45 minutes north of San Francisco, closer to San Jose, like 20 minutes from San Jose.
Okay.
So, it's a huge city now, but when I was growing up, there was a lot of land around it, a lot of, people kept livestock. There was a lot of orchards, things like that. Not anymore. Tesla's there, so it's huge. Yeah, that's where the Tesla plant is. But I don't live there anymore.
Okay. Now, were you able to spend a lot of time outdoors, or was that something that you did a lot or not much as a kid?
I I preferred like sitting around reading when I was a little kid. I didn't like doing outdoor activities as much. I mean, we did a lot of outdoor stuff. We went backpacking, hiking, things like that. I played sports, but I absolutely hated them. I especially hated running, and I played soccer. So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. So, yes, to say yes, that I did spend time outdoors, but I didn't like it.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think a lot of us hated the mile in gym class, right?
Oh, yeah. Even in high school, as I got older, I was even like so defined. I'm like, I'm not running. I'm not changing. You can give me an F in PE. Like,
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
funny now because I tell people, I go, I actually got an F in PE. I
That's
wouldn't dress. I like was such a brat, I'm like, I don't want to, I was just, as I got older, I was kind of had an attitude.
yeah.
So, but that's how
So,
I was. But when I was growing up, though, I didn't really like sports, but my father was like the president of the Fremont City Soccer League, and my brother was really, really good at sports from the time he was like 5 years old. He started playing soccer.
hmm,
So my parents took me. I like dance. I was in dance classes, but my parents felt that I needed to be more in a team sport to interact with others because I was so quiet and shy. Believe it or not, you would never know that. As I got older, that totally changed. So
wow.
yeah, so that's why I was forced into sports, and I'm glad I was. I mean, I hated it at the time, but it's like I look back and I'm like, I know why my parents were doing it, to for us to try different things, And my dad was a runner, and my brother was the runner as a little kid. He was doing 10Ks and stuff way back in the day.
Oh, okay. So was it just you and your brother then? Is that
No,
what
I
the
have
family
two
was?
older sisters, so it was almost two different families, even though we were same parents. I had two older sisters that were 11 and 9 years older, so they were kind of already like doing their thing, as teenagers, and as they got older, so it was me and my brother always on vacations and stuff with my parents because my two older sisters were much older, so they were doing their own thing.
Oh, gotcha. So, what was as you were growing up then, what was your identity within the family? Like, what was your role like?
I was the little sister to my two older sisters, and then my brother was the only boy, and my parents wanted a boy. So I was almost like a middle child. I always say that because my parents waited so long to have a boy and, to carry on my dad's name. There's like
Mhm.
5 generations that stopped with my brother, but because he has two girls.
Oh, gotcha.
So, yeah. So, and so I felt like a middle child, and I was trying to keep up with my older sisters, which I was like so much younger than them. But as I became a teenager, I was trying to be, hip like them. But I was like way younger, it's like when they were 20, I was like, 10. And then they were older, it's like I was trying to hang out with them, and it was not.
Gotcha. So were they a good influence on you or a bad influence, would you say?
Oh, they weren't a bad influence, no, because I never like they were partying and doing their thing, but I didn't see that side of it because my oldest sister got married at 19,
Hmm.
and I hung out with her a lot. So she had my niece when she was 21. So I always wanted a little sister. So I hung out with her a lot. And actually, she didn't do drugs. Let me take that back. Her husband he smoked pot.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, she wasn't a bad influence. And then my second oldest sister, she was bipolar. And back in the day, people were not diagnosed with, you know,
Mm.
with any kind of mental illness like that. So she got into drugs early on, and she passed away 19 years ago from a heroin overdose. So she never could quite get sober, but she, was on drugs when she was, younger. My parents always had issues with her, but it's like, back then people didn't know what bipolar was. They just thought she'd get crazy and like,
Extreme.
lash out. Yes, like
Oh boy.
very extreme. So, and then she also got married pretty young. She was like 18 or 19 when she got married.
Hmm.
So, and she got sober then when she was married for quite a few years. And then, so it's just basically me and my brother. Like we were a separate family. Like all the vacations we went on, it was just me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. So,
So, so your sister got sober and then she started using again and
yeah,
died from
just
it.
for a short time. Yeah, she was on and off drugs. pretty much from the time she was 15, I want to say. And she ended up, like I said, 19 years ago, she passed away. So she was in her 40s when she passed
Hmm.
away. So yeah, she never could quite get it. I mean, she was in and out of programs. I think the longest she was sober was like a year, but she'd always go back to those people. You got to get
Yes.
away from your friends. So,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
could not, she just couldn't quite do it.
Huh. Now, how did her, now I know that you've been sober for quite a while as well, but
Yeah,
you,
going on
you,
30 years in June this year.
gotcha. So you
So,
were you just, you were sober when she died then? Is that right? If I
oh
do the
yeah,
math right?
yeah. I had been sober for a long time before when she died. She died in, yeah, so 19 years ago, and I've been sober almost 30 years.
Yeah.
So, and she used to always, say, why could you do it? And why can't I do it? And I said, well, you got to
Yeah.
find something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So
Why?
I found running, and that's how I got into running. I got into working out when I got sober. I ended up getting arrested, spent a couple nights in jail, and that was enough for me. Like I sat there going, what did I do to get here? It was pretty scary. And I was selling drugs. So I was very, very lucky that I only had to do a couple of days. And then I went through drug diversion because my boyfriend at the time took all the blame.
Mm.
And he was the one that ended up going to jail for, he got 6 months, but they ended up giving him 3 months, and then he was on house arrest for another 3 months. But I went through a whole program. So I went through what was called drug diversion. And I was very lucky. My lawyer said that usually they're not that nice, but on people that are dealing drugs, they usually take the couple and both of them get the same amount of time. But he did see that I was working, that I had a job, and you know, and that I had never been in trouble before. So I got into the program and followed it to a T, and
Mm.
that's what really helped me. And I realized, in the beginning, it's like I can't go to the nightclubs anymore. I can't hang out with these people anymore. I ended up after 6 months breaking up with that boyfriend. It was just a toxic relationship, and I ended up moving back. I was living in San Jose, and I moved back to Fremont with my mom, and had to tell her everything. She didn't know I had gotten arrested or anything like that.
Oh, huh.
And so, yeah, she didn't know. And so I was going through therapy and NA and AA and all of that. And it was the best thing I ever did. I mean, I'm so thankful and grateful I got arrested, because I would not be sitting here right now. I would not be a runner. I would not be who I am now, because
Mm.
there's no way I would have wanted to run ever.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't on drugs back then, there would have not been that reason for me to have to find something. And that's what I always told my sister. You got to find something you're passionate about. You got to find your passion, and that will help you maintain your sobriety. And so, like, luckily for me, it was like just by exercising, going to the gym, walking, and then one day deciding to, like, I'm going to run, this 3 miles that I walk every day, and just going from there, and taking off basically.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. It is something how some people, they get the recovery and others just don't. Like I mean, I know I've been in recovery for, I guess, over 40 years now. And I know that it just,
Congratulations.
watching it happen, or just watching people come in, and, a certain number of them seem to get it and move forward. And then others kind of, others just, I know people have been doing it for 30 years, just not being sober. Like they just they come in, they get like a week or two or 6 months, maybe, if they're lucky. And then,
They're,
then it's the same shit over and over again.
yeah,
And
and that's not fun. That's not a way to live, especially the older you get. I mean, I still look and see, there's still people out there that I knew back in the day that didn't get it. And I see them on social media or whatever, and I'm just like, how are they still alive? First of all, like, I would have
yeah,
been dead or in prison. That's the bottom line.
yeah,
That's where I would be. And I decided I didn't want that, and it's like, I don't know. I guess just some people can, they have a stronger will to want to live, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, my sister just couldn't get it, and
mm,
she ended up dying of an overdose. She was, it's like she was in and out of jail all the time. And I guess she had gotten out because I hadn't seen her for like a year after my mom passed away. Me and my sister ended up owning a house together, and my oldest sister, and we didn't allow her there. We're like, unless you get sober and clean, because she'll steal anything from you. It's like you turn your back and stuff's missing. So, she wasn't allowed there. And, I just knew when I opened the door, when the police were there, I was like, I haven't heard from my sister. This has got to be, like, why would the police come to the house for just out of the blue? And it was on December 17th. And they were like, do you know Margaret Corbett, Peggy Corbett? And I said, I do. And they said, well, we found her dead in a hotel room and we need somebody to come and identify her. So, but yeah, she had just got out of jail apparently. And I think, she was in a house with, or a hotel with a bunch of drug addicts. And they said that they left and they came back and she was dead, but she probably overdosed when they were there, and they weren't, it's like, they're not going to call an ambulance. It's like, so they took off, and because they said she had been dead for a while, and they said they weren't there when it happened, and they came back like 6 hours later. So, but you don't know with these people. So
sure.
And there was a bunch of different drugs in her system, not just heroin. So I always wonder if she just, because she had just got out of jail, if she just was sick and tired, you know what I mean? And just did it. I mean, you obviously know when you haven't done drugs for months and months and months, when you've been in jail for 3 months, and she knew she was a drug addict. You can't do as much as you can do, and it's like, to have several different drugs in your system, it makes me wonder, like, that might have been a suicide. Like, she was done, she just lived such a rough life. It's like her kids were all taken away, like, early on. She had, different kids with different guys, and it was just,
a lot of difficulty.
Exactly. And my mom tried to help her when my mom was alive for years and years and years, like putting her in and out of programs, spending so much money. And when my mom passed away, she thought she was going to get money because we were all, we had a living trust. And my mom specifically put in there, like, we were able to use her money to put her into a program. And once she had been clean and sober for 3 years, then she would get the remainder, which wasn't used for the rehab. And she just said we were ripping her off. And we were like, you cannot come here anymore. Let us know when you want to get into a program, and we're more than happy to help you. But like I said, it's sad. There's so many people out there that, it's like, oh, nowadays I'm glad I'm not on drugs. First of all, with this whole fentanyl thing, I'm like, I would be afraid to do drugs, period. Like, such young people are dying left and right with this, like, they're just sticking that in everything. So I pray to God every day, like, I'm not on drugs anymore, because you don't know what's going to happen.
It's
scary. It's scary. So
and it's a with her being away for a while, it's a progressive, as you know, it's a progressive disease that just because you're not using doesn't mean that it's not, you don't pick up where you left off. You pick up where you would have been if you kept
exactly.
So that's, I'm sorry for your loss there.
Thank you.
Has that impacted your sobriety at all? Like, did that help? It's that, you have your own reasons for staying sober and things like that, but did that add a new dimension to it, do you think, at all? Or
it made me feel more compassionate when I see people out on the streets panhandling and stuff like that, because she was living like that. And it's like, I don't want to give people money to give them money, because I know what they're going to do.
Sure.
And it's like, when they have a sign and they say they want food, I say, I'm more than happy to buy you some food. I go, but because I lost my sister due to an overdose, I cannot give you money to let yourself kill yourself. Like, other people can give you money, and I understand you have to do drugs to stay alive, but I will be more than happy to take you in the store and buy you some food. And so I know how she was, like, panhandling and doing whatever she would for drugs. So it makes me feel a lot more compassionate for people on drugs, because it is a disease, and it's like, I'm no better than anybody else just because I'm sober now. It's like, I could have easily been her,
Yes.
But I just have this thing where I'm not going to give people money to go get drugs. I just can't do it, because it's like, if they died and they got something with fentanyl in it, it's like, I don't want to be feeling guilty. And so I prefer, I'm like, if you need food, I'll be more than happy to buy you food, but I'm not going to buy you alcohol and I'm not going to give you money for drugs. It's just not going to happen. So, and if they truly want something, they'll go in the store with me and I'll bring them something back, and I've done that numerous times. Where I live now in Bishop, we don't have like I'm sure there's probably a proper problem on the reservation close to here, but you don't see people panhandling around here. There's like 5 homeless people that live around here that I occasionally see. And I don't think they're on drugs. So yeah, nothing like where I used to live. So when you live in a small, city of less than, I guess we have like 4,600 people. So that's not a lot of people.
Small.
Oh yeah.
Even though it's like in the summer and in the winter, people going over to Mammoth to go skiing, it seems much bigger. Like in the summer, everybody comes here to go backpacking, fast packing, running in the mountains, and it seems way bigger because every hotel is filled up, like every restaurant is full. It's like we're right along the Pacific Crest Trail, and we get the hikers in here. This is like a major stopover for them. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it seems bigger than what it is because people are like, "There's only 4." I go, look around. There's not a lot of houses, and the water department, LA Water Department, owns most of the land surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just go, "Oh, I want to buy some land over there. Look at all that land." It doesn't work like that in Bishop. So there's not a lot of housing. And we were lucky. We bought a house here 5 years ago. So, and it's awesome. My boyfriend works for Sierra Life Flight, so he's a fixed wing pilot for transporting. It's in our ambulance basically. So
okay.
That's how we get around here. Like we have hospitals, but they're not like if you need to have surgery of any sorts, you got to be like transported to Reno or LA or wherever, somewhere bigger where there's a big facility.
Huh.
So. Wow. We have like 6 beds at our hospital. So
wow.
Yeah, or 10 maybe. 10. And there's like Mammoth has a hospital. There's like 15 beds there. We have 10. And then I think there's like maybe 5 or 10 in Lone Pine.
So you get out on that trail quite often, isn't that right?
Oh yeah. In the summer and spring and fall when there's no snow, like last year, I wasn't out there until July. I mean, we had so much snow.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. And there was still snow. I was out there in August, September running, doing my loops out there, 25-mile loops. And it was like I was traipsing through snowfields all year long. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So, and right now I was looking at like a memory and all the snow last year on this particular day in town. I was like, wow, we've been lucky. We have not gotten, not even in the mountains, hardly any snow. So I'm going with the flow right now. I'm very, very happy.
Yeah.
It was cold.
We just got our first dusting here. So
where are you guys at?
Or in Connecticut. So
okay.
East Coast here. Mm-hmm. So in New England. And I think a lot of the other states have gotten it. I don't know. Connecticut seems to suit us pretty well here. We get we kind of, I don't know, we avoid all the stuff that's like, it's not like Buffalo where we're getting hammered with lake effect snow and
used to, you don't get all that.
Yeah. But and I have to say although the AT does go through the state.
Yeah.
We don't have any huge mountains. I mean, our tallest mountains are 1,100 feet or something like that, Celeste, isn't that right?
Something like that. Most of them are like 600.
That's not very high.
No. But here's the thing. They will kick your ass.
Oh, I know. I run in Virginia. I run 100 milers there twice on the Appalachian Trail. So routes and rocks. And they're small climbs, but they're lots of climbs and very technical.
That is what we have. Yeah. Constantly up, down.
So you go up 200, you go down 200 if you know.
Exactly. And it's so technical. Big mountains where you're going up and you're going down, but the trails are, they're technical, but they're pretty well established, You
have switchbacks.
Backpacking trails. Yes, we do. We don't have straight up and straight down like you guys do.
Yeah, we don't really know what this, we've heard of.
And that's why the Appalachian Trail is much harder, they say, than the Pacific Crest Trail because of that. We have the elevation, which makes it harder for some. But anybody that does the AT and does the PCT, they're like, the AT is harder, even though we're at elevation and we're climbing higher mountains. But it's just that green tunnel you're in the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the humidity and the weather and the whatever over there.
Yeah. It's a lot of interesting things in our running. No doubt about it. I wanted to ask you, so I know that you also lost your father, right? I mean, pretty
Yes, when I
early
was
on
17.
when you
Uh-huh.
were 17. So was that the first real loss in your life, would you say?
Yes, it was. Yeah, 'cause
Gotcha.
my grandparents were still alive. Yeah, I didn't even
Mhm.
know. I mean, other than an animal or something like that. But yeah, it was very unexpected. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't sick. He was a runner. He was,
Hmm.
for the most part healthy. But back, then way back in the day, I mean, he ate meat. He smoked. He had quit smoking and he was training actually. He had run one marathon, I believe, and he was training for another marathon. But people smoked back then and ran too. But he had actually quit smoking. But it's just his parents lived until their 90s, so it wasn't like he had a genetic heart issue.
Yeah.
So he died of a massive heart attack at 48 years old. So
Wow.
Wow. Oh,
yeah,
that
I
that
know.
is very
And so I
young.
was always
I'd
freaked
like
out
to
when like
point out that's very young.
it's very young.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I outlived my dad by 11 years.
Yes. Yeah. I think
So
you and I are about the same age. So I'm
yeah,
coming
I
up
just turned
on,
59. So I'll be
yeah.
60 this year. Woo,
Yeah.
woo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 48, so
Yeah,
She's
so
the
you're the same
baby.
age as my dad. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but things have changed. Nowadays they can see stuff, and like back then he had went to the hospital like a month before he died, and they thought it was some sort of hernia thing he was suffering from, and
Mm.
because he went in and he was like, I'm having this chest pain thing. So when he came home the day he
Oh,
died, my one of my boyfriends, ex-boyfriend at the time, Joe was old enough to drive, and my brother was there, and he wasn't old enough to drive. And my dad asked Joe, and I was out shopping or something. I was out shopping, yeah, and asked him if he could drive him to the hospital because he called his doctor, and it's like they didn't say send an ambulance. He's like, could you drive over to the hospital? It's like that would never happen nowadays.
oh
And so
yeah.
they were
Yeah.
on their way to the hospital, and he had a major heart attack, and my brother tried to save him. It was like it was too
Oh,
late.
that must have
So
been a
yeah,
horrible loss.
it was, especially for my brother. My brother was very close to my dad, and to watch his dad die in front of him. And I'm still friends with that ex-boyfriend to this day. He's married and had kids, like we've just always been
Hmm.
friends. And so that really affected him too in his life,
Yeah. How did that
growing
change your
up.
life? Like what happened after that with you?
That's when I went a little crazy. I was like, oh, this isn't it. My mom was too busy working. And so my brother kind of started smoking pot and started doing drugs. And he was the athlete. So, and my
Hmm.
older sisters weren't in the house. They were both married, had kids, and living elsewhere. So I started partying more, going out to clubs more. It was
Hmm.
like, just, and my mom, like, didn't have much control. She was working and, we were able to hide stuff. And then my uncle, her brother, came to live with us and to try to help her out because he was retired at the time. And so I ended up going to cosmetology school at that time because my mom's like, you either got to get a job full time somewhere. I was working, but she's like, you need to figure out what you want to do. So I went to cosmetology school and then ended up moving out, getting a job and moving away.
Hmm.
And then my brother she got him into a rehab, early on because he was still under 18, and got he got clean and sober. He was like just going crazy. Went off the deep end, and so he got sober for many many years, and he ended up going back out like how people do, drinking again. And
Hmm.
but he was like, oh, I could do it. I can handle it socially or whatever. And now he's been off of alcohol probably for another 15, 20 years.
Oh,
So
very
yeah,
good.
For
so
him.
and he's totally into AA and the program and all of that. So yeah, he decided, yeah, he needed to get back into it. Or actually 16 years now, I think.
Huh.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so he went off the deep end. I kind of was doing my thing, but then I ended up getting a job and working in a salon and moving in with a boyfriend, and went from there and just drinking a lot. This was before I was doing drugs. Really, I
Hmm.
would occasionally smoke pot, and I wasn't doing meth or anything. And then that, like several years later, I got really into that after I broke up with that boyfriend. I met somebody else, and so that's how I got into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
It makes me wonder how
Yeah.
much, like the difference between oh, I can't think straight, but like, is it environment or is it genetics? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because you look at your family and there was obviously trauma, so it could
Yeah.
be environmental, but
Hmm.
3 out of the 4 of you also had addictions. So
So
is it
my parent, yeah,
genetics?
I would say, well, mine was because I had been abused by a family member growing up. My brother wasn't, so
I remember that from
I
your
feel
book.
like that was a lot of why I was like hiding and masking things, because my parents didn't know. My mom didn't know until I got sober. Like, I hid it from them. They even asked me like a few days later, did so and so do anything to you? And I was like scared because he's like, I'm going to kill your family. And it's like when you're 9 years old, it's like you just, yeah. So, and my brother wasn't, and I just think his was a lot to do with seeing my dad die, and
The
then
trauma,
he
right?
was an athlete, yeah, the trauma, and my sister, because of her bipolar, trying to manage her situation and her mental illness that was never diagnosed until she was older. Like nowadays, it's like they diagnose people constantly, and it's like a lot of those people don't end up drug addicts. But if you know of people that were using drugs back then that are like in their 60s now, a lot of it was they were misdiagnosed or not diagnosed, with mental health issues back in the day. So, and my oldest sister didn't do drugs, but she was in horrible relationship. So
yes, dysfunction can show itself a lot of different ways.
A lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I always say,
drank, but not that much. And my mom was not really a drinker at all. And I think my grandfather may have been, but I never saw him drunk. He was just a mean old guy growing up, So
I have probably six to 8 generations back that I can trace alcoholism or severe dysfunction. Like in some cases, it was the generation that said my father was such a drunk that there's no way that I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
And where they just put the clamps on and just kind of had a white knuckle angry life.
Yeah, no. A lot of people do that. They see their parents and they're like, I'm not going to be like that,
Yeah. But they don't find the help.
No. And that's the thing is you are affected by people around you, and that's why Al-Anon and things like that. It's like to get into therapy is going to help you, for sure. And I have a friend right now, her mother finally admitted that she was an alcoholic. And it's like, she's in her mid 40s and her mom is in her close to 70, I guess. And she grew up around that. So she's going to, even though they don't live in the same area, but she's very happy her mom's getting help. And she's going to Al-Anon now, which I told her because I run with her husband. And I'm like, that is the best thing for her. So she can understand like the disease, because she grew up with her mom being a closet alcoholic all these years.
Yes.
And finally she's admitting it. So it affects you always, even though she doesn't drink, but
that's how I actually, one of the ways that I found AA was by going to Alateen as a kid to deal with my my father was an active alcoholic. So, dealing with his alcoholism or, trying to make sense of that as a because
you don't understand it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I had all the education that you could get from Alateen, explaining
but it didn't.
the disease of denial. I knew what alcoholics did, how they lied, everything about it. And it didn't fucking matter.
No, it didn't fucking matter. No, and sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though but it makes it easier, I think, when you do go to get sober, that you had the tools in the beginning. That's what I always tell people. Like, if you have those tools, like you could be clean and sober for 10 years. And if you fall off, back into it, at least you have the knowledge to know, okay, most of the people that try a couple of times can get it by the second or third time because they have had the tools in the beginning. Like my brother, he went right back into it and he knew like, this is not okay. I can't handle it. I thought I could. And I did all these years, once a week or once an occasion, having beer or whatever, wine. And then it changed into whatever, it's like, and there's a lot of us in recovery that are ultra runners, it's like you look around, and that's why I think people that are doing like longer distance, like the 200s and then like multi-day and crazy shit like that, if you took a pool of like everybody out there would be like a lot of people that are like, yes, I've been sober, or yes, I'm in recovery, or yes, because we have that mindset to be able to really, really dig deep, I guess, because when you make a huge change like that, you're changing your entire life. And I always say, when I'm out doing a 200 miler, it was like harder for me to go chase that getting high than it is to be out there. I could be out running and, it's something I'm doing for myself than to drive around and try to get, score speed and, and just chase that high. And it was ugly, horrible. So,
Yeah.
and and the hallucinations that I have now are nothing, because I'm aware of hallucinations. I'm like, when I was on meth, I was like living in a hallucination the whole time when you're spun out of your mind. I go, and 200 milers, I'm like, I know this is a hallucination. People that haven't been drug addicts or alcoholics or been awake for days, especially drug addicts, they believe those hallucinations are weird. I paced a friend of mine at Moab last year, and he was like really out of his mind talking to things. And I was like, he's never done drugs before either. So like after the race, I'm like, you are not safe to ever run a 200 alone, because he's like, that guy, he gave you the keys, right, for room 174? And I'm like, we were heading to an aid station. And I'm like, the guy with the cigarette and the beard. I'm like, no. I'm like, there was nobody fucking there, you idiot. Like, get to the aid station. You gotta sleep.
That's how that's
I'm
how
good at
I am. I'm kind of like, unfortunately, even though I definitely did drugs and I definitely drank and all that, I think that I'm just kind of wired close to the edge. Like, as much as I'd like to say, I'd like to put out the impression that like I have my shit all tight and that I'm, super mentally strong and all that stuff. And I can hyper focus and do lots of things like that. But I've always been kind of on the edge, like very, I am just very sensitive to my environment and to external, to foreign substances, including lack of sleep. So
I see stuff, trust me.
Oh yeah.
I had Bigfoots chasing me, but I'm like, I know they're not there. Close your eyes. They're not there.
I
know they're not there, but it's like, and then I listened to too many podcasts of all these like shit going on in the national parks, and it's like, now I don't. I mean, the last 3 years, I used to fast pack all by myself and go out to the wilderness multiple days. Now I'm like, I'm kind of afraid of all these missing people in Yosemite. Like,
because you're listening to true crime stuff.
Yes.
I love me some true crime.
I do too. Yeah, trust me.
If you look at the statistics, we're safer in the woods.
Yeah, we are. But there's those things that want to take you. And it's like, they probably don't want me. They don't need my brain. They're like, she's already messed up.
They gotta catch you first, okay?
So, exactly. But I got my pepper spray and my knife, and I got my InReach. The only thing I don't have what's that guy say? Carry a gun, but you don't have a concealed permit. So, but I got everything with me, like in case. But no, there's times when I'm out there like doing like a 20-hour run, and doing a loop out in the wilderness by myself. It's like, what is it? What is it? It's like, there's a deer. You see eyes. You see a bear. You're like, it's like, I get more startled by people though. Like in the daytime, I'm like, oh. And they're like, God. And I'm like, sorry, I haven't slept for 18 hours. I'm on my way out.
Oh boy. Yeah. It can get weird. I've had it.
So I'm hyper aware of when I'm out there. So like I go on, I start some runs at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like head on the swivel,
Yes.
So it's like, you just have to be aware of your surroundings. And where I live, it's much safer, I would say, than running around in the city. Like I run right down the street, around the corner, like less than, I think it's like 0.45 to the trailhead. It's like, it's not even that, maybe 0.35 to that trailhead. But if I go out my backyard, I'm on the trail. I'm like 100 yards from the trail.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's nice. I'm a half mile from our trail through my neighborhood.
Yeah. So I can just be on the trail and cross 2 roads and get up into the mountains.
Now, did I hear at one point that you're looking to run, I forget whether it was, you're looking to run 100 in every state? Is that something
I was kind of wanting to do that, but there's so many things I want to do. So
yeah,
I think for my 60th birthday year, I decided that I'm going to do. So Candace has come up with Destination Trail Races is going to have a 300 miler next year. So I'm going to do the Triple Crown again. So all 3 of her races plus the 300 miler plus hopefully I can get into Badwater again plus Cocodona. So that's going to be like, I'm going to do 6 big things for my 60th year.
Don't your knees hurt? Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry.
But I still do want to do some other races in different states. So that I haven't run in. And I mean, I ran across the United States with a group. So I've been to different states, but I would like to, I mean, I'm looking at more doing the 200s in different states that have 200s, I think.
Gotcha. Have you run 100 in Connecticut yet by any chance?
No, I have not in Connecticut.
Okay.
So, and I'm sure you have something there. Well, I've asked other people back east. I'm like, what other, because I have a lot of relatives in Massachusetts. My mom was from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
So I have tons of relatives. So she lived in Leominster. She grew up in Leominster and Lunenburg area. So I have tons of cousins all over. And I have cousins, I think, in Connecticut too. I mean, she came from a family of 10 brothers and sisters. So everybody has since passed away, I think. No, they were she was the youngest. And so I don't know, at least like between cousins and second cousins and third cousins, probably 100 cousins back there.
Gotcha. So I think that I sent you a note a couple years back.
You did, with a race in Connecticut.
Yeah, called the Cut 112.
And when is that one?
It's always the first weekend in June. So it's really, actually, this year it's May 31st is a Friday. Okay. And then it goes, it's the first. Yeah, it's 112.
I think I could do it next year.
Yeah. If you'd like to, I'll tell you what, it is a good time. I
do. I need to come back that way anyways and see my relatives because they're like, they follow me on social media and we're not very close. Like when you don't live with, I have some cousins that I spent summers back there when I was a little kid, but there's so many cousins I've never even met, but they follow me on Instagram. So it's like, I would like to meet those people,
Sure.
They're related to me. So.
This run starts at the Massachusetts border.
Oh, cool.
And
so
then
it's basically across Connecticut.
It does. It goes right through the center of Connecticut. It's 112 miles, and it goes almost exclusively on trails. And it ends at the Long Island Sound.
Oh, cool.
So you go right into the water, is how you finish.
Oh, and it's all on trail.
Yeah,
Makes it nice.
It's the New England Trail.
Yeah. The New England Trail.
Okay, so that's the name of it. Yeah.
It's like a scenic, it's like the AT, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people do they usually get in that race?
So here's the deal. It's not a race.
Okay, so it's like a group.
Yeah, because we really couldn't get.
It's like a fat ass.
Kind of thing. Except that here's what I do. It's Cultra puts it on. So we've had it for 7 years ago. We started it 7 years ago, and it's a we could never get all the permits that you would need to have this.
Got it. So that's why you have to be low key.
Yeah. So it's
a fat ass.
Exactly. So it doesn't really technically exist, but and everybody provides their own support, but
everybody's just running by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could have a crewing you, and they meet you at the whatever locations. There's whatever you could have pacers, whatever.
I give everybody.
I like that. I like that kind of running.
Yeah. I kind of keep tabs on people, and then also have streets.
Just make sure they don't go missing.
Oh yeah. We have everybody knows where all the rest stops are, and it's set up now as it's a difficult course. So our fastest runners have done it in just over. Nobody's broken 24 hours on this. So most people are over 30 hours.
Okay.
And the cutoff's like about 45 hours or so, 43 to 45 hours. So it's basically dawn. So
yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. It's about 17,000 feet of climb, just in, a couple rocks at a time. So.
Oh no, yeah, but that's not that. That's a good amount of climbing. For
Yeah.
112 miles, that's not a lot. I mean,
Yeah, it's not a ton of vert, but it's also it's relentless. So it's
Yeah.
it'll get you in its own way.
It's actually the first 20 miles aren't bad. The last 20 miles aren't bad.
Yes.
All the
It's all in
vert is like in the
between.
middle. Yeah.
Yeah, everything in between
Yeah.
really sucks. So
Oh, but that sounds fun.
oh yeah,
I will talk to my
it's
boyfriend
beautiful.
Phil, and we can run it together.
yeah.
We'll have a crew person.
If you needed support, we would definitely be able to get you crews. And,
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole community that just rises to this.
And it really is.
Awesome.
It's almost like a moving get together from aid station to aid station.
No, I like fun stuff like that because I do a lot of solo 100-milers, and I get my friends involved, and they come out and do loops with me, and we use my house as an aid station. I mean, I've done that forever because I do my birthday run, so I'm always, it's nothing new for me to run 100 plus, even 200-mile solo runs. It's
awesome.
That's what I like, fun stuff like that, where it's like low key, it's like I love that.
This is, you don't need any stones or any, qualifying races or anything like that. So
no, that's my cup of tea. I like these kind of things.
Good.
Yeah, with fun people and everybody's fun. There's no you don't have a bunch of competition. You just have everybody helping each other. Like the 200s, everybody's helping each other.
Yes.
Make sure you're not running past somebody because they're on the side of the trail. You're like, what do you need? You're helping each other out.
Yeah.
100-milers, I can tell you, feel like more and more, it's like people are just like, they don't even, I could see somebody in the distance being on the side of the trail and like 3 people running by and not saying anything. And I'm like, I'm so used to like, what do you need? Do you need some salt? Do you need this? Do you need that? But the races are just so, 200s is like, it's mandatory that you help somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, Candace specifically says, if you have to drop out of your race to help an individual, you will get in the race free next year. Because
I like that.
Well, these races would get canceled if somebody got really hurt and could die out there. People are just going by and not helping
And
them.
why should we have to? It's funny though. Why should we even have to tell anybody that it's okay to save someone's life?
Yeah, you know what? I know. It's so weird, but you know what? People are that way. It's crazy. You even think in our sport that they wouldn't be, but I mean, like I said, in 200. It's totally different, but I see a lot more in the bigger hundreds. Nobody, people are just out there for their.
Connecticut doesn't roll like that. I don't think.
No. Yeah.
I don't think it does. Like, just as an example, like I ran a 50K and it was like I was having a good race. Okay, so I was probably in the top 15 or something like that, and there was this kid that was probably a kid. He was probably 5 miles from the finish or something like that. And he was just eating shit for a while on the side of the trail. He was just like, hating life. And I said, hey, you okay? What do you need? And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I said, here, why don't you have a goo? Here's a goo. So I gave him a goo and he's like, hey, thank you. And I went and I started running and I was like, for me to be doing okay, I was like in the mood, like, I don't want anybody passing me. Okay.
Yeah.
But now, like, this guy was all like legs and lungs. Like, he was a runner. He wasn't like me. I mean, this guy was like a real, he was really getting it done out there. So then I was like, as I'm running, I'm saying, what did you just do? You just like gave somebody
him. He's going to pass you.
And now like he's going to catch you. So, he's gonna definitely catch you. So I just, luckily it didn't happen, but it was fun though, and I'd do it again. And if he had passed me, I would have had a better story.
And you have the experience. Like, people come out and they think, I'm going to run a 50K. I've run, track or cross country, and they go out like gangbusters. Like, I will say I did that on my first 50K. I was used to running marathons, and everybody's walking up a hill and they're like, you should walk the hill. And I thought, what a bunch of these old men are telling me to walk. I was like 33.
Yeah.
Because it was all old guys back in the day when I started doing ultras back in 1998. And, they're like, you should be walking. And I'm like, oh, these old men. I'm like, I'm a runner. I'm running, up the hill. So I ran all the hills. like 6 miles from the finish. My legs locked up. I could hardly climb anymore. And all these old guys are passing me. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, I couldn't, my legs were like still. They were like so heavy. Like I didn't know anything about nutrition, salt. It was like 105 degrees. I like back then there wasn't even goo. There was like Squeezy was a company that made gels, and that like was way back in the day. So I had like one with me, and like I did at my marathons, and I'm like, you got to do this. Like this is your first ultra, so do it at mile 26 because you used to do it at 23 miles for the marathon. So yeah, so I understand.
That's like when
I was that person.
power bars used to be the other.
Yeah, and then
fuel.
that was the first one I remember, and the bars were disgusting.
They were like those
you could break
solid,
it too.
extruded taffy bars that would break your. If it was winter, you would break your teeth.
Oh, you couldn't eat them in the winter. And it's like, and I didn't know anything. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to eat because this is what they say. You got to eat one of these things. Oh,
yeah, and I thought that it had magical powers because it was
me
like
too.
A power bar.
That's what I thought. The gel. That's what like hanging on my very first marathon. I got that gel, the squeezy gel at the expo, and they're like, use it at mile 24 or 23. They're like, when you're getting ready to hit the wall, and I was like, waiting for the wall. I'm like, okay. They said I'm gonna, my legs are gonna get stiff. Everything's gonna get stiff. I didn't hit a wall until I was done, and then I was like, I couldn't move. It was so funny. I laugh about it now because I'm like, I could hardly walk after I finished the marathon. I was like, Now it's like, yeah, I do that in training and I'm okay. Or after a 200, I might be a little sore that day, but the next day I'm okay. So it's so crazy to think like back then.
So what was your first, was a marathon was it the longest distance that you had done at the time, or did you do something like?
So I had run a 10K.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I had been running for a week, like a week and a half. And I saw a flyer in Barnes and Noble's for this 10K that was called the Carousel of the Coasters at like Great America, an amusement park. So I thought, oh, I'm going to run a 10K. So let me backtrack. So I had been walking this 3-mile loop for like a year or two. And then I had been going to the gym. And one day I was like, oh, you know what? And I had a wiener dog back then. I've always been into wiener dogs for many years now. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go run this. So I didn't take him for his walk that day. And back then we didn't have like a GPS or anything, but I had known it was 3 miles because I had used the odometer in the car once to see how far I was going. So I ran it and I was like amazed that I was able to run it. And then I found that flyer for this 10K. And I told my mom, oh, there's a 5K and 10K. Do you want to walk the 5K? And I'm going to run this 10K. And I knew nothing about running still. This is like a week and a half, less than 2 weeks that I've been running. And I was wearing all black. I was still in my goth phase after I got, sober. And I didn't know you weren't supposed to go as fast as you can go. I felt like I was going to throw up by the time I finished. And so we got back to the car, but I felt like so accomplished. I'm like, oh my God, I ran this 10K in like 47 minutes, or I think it was 40. It was pretty fast. And I got to my vehicle and there was a flyer for the San Francisco Marathon. And I was like, oh, so I knew it was like 20 something miles because I had watched Boston Marathon with my dad all the time on TV. That was a big thing. He was really into sports. And I even saw Western States on Wide World of Sports when I was like 16 or 17 before he passed away. It was on. And they used to air it on Wide World of Sports. And so anyways, I called my friend Kevin and I'm like, hey, how far is the marathon? And he's like, it's 26.2. And I was like, okay, I'm going to run this. I'm going to sign up for the San Francisco Marathon in 3 months. And he was like, what? And I go, yeah. I go, I could do it. So I signed up. And then I was like, well, I don't know anything about training. So I went into Barnes and Nobles and I was like, okay, let me look in the running section and find, how to train for a marathon book. So I got a book and I don't remember the author right now. And so I had to skip because they had like, each week starting week 1 of your training. And so now I'm like 3 months away. So I had to skip up to the chapter that was like where you should be at on your 3 months training before the marathon. And I was like, okay, I got to do a 9-mile long run. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to get in my car and drive to like 4.5 miles out to see where my turnaround will be, because I didn't there was no Garmin, no GPS back then.
Yes.
So that was your Garmin and GPS and your
Yeah,
Strava
you
and
used to
everything else was your car.
drive you around afterwards.
Yes, and you just figured it out when you were on a trail. You were like, okay, I run this and that pace at a flat, and you just come up with your own formula. So, anyways, I knew where to turn around. So it was like that Sunday was the long run day. So I started from there. So I ran out and I came home and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I ran 9 miles. So it was going from 6.2 to 9, and it just started from there. And I was, training like the book said, and ended up running a marathon. And it was funny because in the middle, I was like mile 13 in the marathon. And I'll never forget this man I was running with. He had DNF the San Francisco Marathon the year before. And we were talking, and, I'm like, I think I want to run that Honolulu Marathon next. And he looks at me, he goes, you finished your first marathon. And I go, I know I'm going to finish. And I go, and I want to sign up for that one because it's in a few months and it's in December. He's like looking at me like I'm a nut. So in the middle of the marathon, and this is how my brain works even in races anytime. So I'm like, I'm going to run the Honolulu Marathon. So I'm running, my marathon. And I actually, at the time I had went back to high school or back to the adult school to get my high school diploma. So there was a kid that I worked with at this bagel shop that I was working at part-time. And he signed up like the day before, and he like lied and said he was 18 and he was only 17. He had just graduated from high school, and he ran the marathon, him and his college friend. And so they both like were trashed at the end. They couldn't even move because they hadn't trained, but they were runners, prior. I mean, I think Danny did much better than us. No, he was actually behind me, and his friend who hadn't run in like 3 years beat us both. So, but yeah, so I finished. What's that?
What was your time? Do you remember what your
time was? 4:15.
Okay. Yeah. That's great.
Somewhere in there. So, and then of course you're like, I got to run, I trying to break that 4-hour barrier. And so I was doing that once I got like a base going. And I think the Honolulu Marathon I was running in between 4:15 and 4:30 at that time. And that race was like, there was like 30,000 people at that one. Wow. And I was like, wow, holy moly. And there's all these little Japanese men smoking at the start, cigarettes. And I was like, what? And then it just started from there. And so that was my first year, within a couple of months time. And the next year I decided, I want to run all the marathons in California. So, and at the time there was like big there was a bunch of big ones, but there was all these little trail marathons that were happening. There was a company called Enviro Sports at the time. Now we have so many race, companies, but they were putting on trail marathons. So I was like, I knew I had to run some of those. And I was like, I've never run on a trail. So my very first trail marathon with them was like, I think in March of that year. And it got canceled. So there was like, I drove, and my mom would go to my marathons with me, and she would like go roaming around if it was in a city. But here she had to like sit. I'm like, you're going to have to wait. And it was pouring rain out. And she's like, they're not going to have this race. I mean, we drive all the way to San Francisco, Marin Headlands, and sitting in the car, and it's like windy. And I'm ready to go. I didn't care. And the race director shows up, and he's like telling everybody it's canceled. There's like, wind advisories and this, that, and the other, and the park wouldn't let him have it. So he's like, we'll postpone it to such and such a date. So we leave and we drive home, and I'm like, in my head, I'm driving, and I'm like, I'm going to run a marathon today because I'm already trained. So it's pouring in Fremont too. And my mom's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to run a marathon right now because I already knew I had been training. So I knew I had a 13-mile loop, and I was like, I'll just run that twice, So she's like, are you out of your fucking mind? And I go, no, I'm trained for a marathon, so I'm going to run a marathon. So I did that. And then finally, when I ended up doing that trail marathon, so I was used to running marathons where there's water every mile. So I had read up, like, you need a water bottle. And, there was like mile 6, it was like a double loop or something. But there was not water out there, like I had my one bottle, and it was like nothing. I hadn't run trail before. And this is a lot of climbing. I've done tons of races out there. And it was like, for the first time, I was just like, what am I? I was like freaking out because I'm trying to run everything. This is so fucking hard. Like, and I get to the point where there's water and it's a spigot, and there's like, they didn't even set up, like, I think they had a table and they had some jugs of water and some cookies, and that was it. And maybe some candy. So I get back to the start finish, and my mom had been sitting there. It was on the beach and the weather was nice. And she goes, "Oh, good, you're done." And I go, "I'm not done. I have to go one more time." And she's like, "Why are you so slow?" And I mean, I think I did it like in 6.5 hours or something. It was, 6 hours and 15 minutes, but it was so hilly, and I never run a, other than like San Francisco Marathon, not like technical trails.
Oh, sure.
Before. So, and I was like scared I'm going to get lost. And I happened to meet this older man that was out there, and he was off course. And I go, "I think the ribbons are over here." And so I got him back on course, and I don't know where I'm going. And so we kind of were running the same pace together. And he was telling me he was running all the marathons in California. And I was like, "Oh, I'm trying to do that." So we became good friends, and we started doing all these races together. And then I convinced him. That's when I decided to do my first ultra, and I convinced him to do an ultra. He hadn't run an ultra, and he was, I was 33 back then, and he was probably like 55 or 60 back then. And so he ended up doing it too, doing the ultra. But yeah, but I got more into it. So like after my first ultra, within less than four months, I had run my first 100-miler. So
wow,
yeah, I was just like constantly like, what can I do next? What am I going to, and there was no like internet. We didn't have social media like we do now, that there's like so much advice out there. There was no advice for me. There was a thing called Ultra Listserv. That was like an email thing. Yeah. With a bunch of old men on it back then.
Yeah. Actually, one of those old men is usually we have 4 of us on the show. So that's Fred Marola, who said hi. He would.
Yeah. So then I'm sure he probably knows who I am on there, like that nutty, weird girl that's young.
Yeah.
It was all a men's thing back then. Even when I showed up at Rocky Raccoon, there was maybe 10 women at that race back then. It was all men,
That's because if we run far, our uterus will fall out. Exactly.
That's what they said. So I did this all on like not knowing anything. And then I started meeting runners as I started, like once I got into Western States, and I was like doing all the local big races, and I became friends with ultra runners. So then there's people like training for Western States. So they're like, "Oh, you got to do this race and that race and this race, and we got to do the Western States training camps and this and that and the other." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
What was your first 100-miler?
Rocky Raccoon.
Oh, it was. That was your first.
Okay, yeah, and it was freaking hotter than shit. Humid. I was not used to any kind of, other than running the Honolulu Marathon was the only time I ever ran in like humidity. And this thing, oh my God, my feet swelled, I had blisters. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing back then. Like the things I read were an ultra running magazine back then that was black and white. And they would tell you kind of like, tape your feet, or, do this and that, change your shoes, you need to change your socks every 20 miles. It's like I got advice through that, but it wasn't through anybody I had met. And when I was out there, I started meeting people and getting advice, and like, you need to take a caffeine pill to stay awake. You need to, and I was like, no, that's drugs.
Who was an early, who was like an early mentor for you on the trails?
Probably Jimbo, that older guy that I had met. He did a lot of trail marathons, and he hadn't done very many ultra marathons, one with me, and then he did a couple more, but probably my friend Mike Palmer.
Oh, okay.
I met him when I started, where did I meet him at? At American River. And he was running with me, and he hadn't met me before, and he goes, you're new to the area or whatever. I haven't seen you on trails. And I go, "Oh yeah, I got into Western States this year." And he goes, "Oh, I'm in too." And he goes, "I've run it 5 times or whatever." And I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Oh, I do all these training runs on the weekends, and I live in Berkeley." And I'm like, "I live in Fremont." So he became my mentor. So I started from there, and then he convinced me you got to do Angelo's Crest. And he had finished, he finished that like 15 times in Western States, I think 15 times, So he was my early mentor. And then of course I surpassed him. I always tell him, I'm like, I didn't need you anymore. After the first couple of years, I didn't need you anymore. I was doing too much on my own. But he would go along with my things. I'm like, "Hey, I want to run 100 miles on the Ohlone Wilderness Trail. Would you come out and run 50 miles with me?" It was like I was already doing stuff early on, like in 2000, like stuff that people were not doing. Like you very rarely heard of people doing solo hundreds. And it's like I just get this stuff in my brain. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that spirit, and that's
and I'm still that way.
yeah. I am too, I think, because that's how the cut started. That's how our race started, was that we just said, you know what? There's not really 100-miler in Connecticut, and
we're going to make one.
So we started talking about it. Like I got like all the race directors together, and we all started talking about like, hey, how can we get 100? How can we get 100? And like we all talked about it, and then nothing fucking happened.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's on board, but nobody wants to be in charge of it. So then that's like me. People are like, you should put a 100-miler on in Bishop. I'm like, I don't want to deal with all that. I'll just go run my own thing. You know, I'll set up a loop and people can do it with me.
So finally we just said, I said, I'm running. Who's coming with me?
There you go.
And I got one other person to go the whole distance with me. And
awesome.
I got 20 people who ran between 60 and 2 miles, So there were 20 other people who cut in and cut out of the run. So, and now it's, I don't know, boy, we probably have, Celeste, how many people would you say are involved with the race? Like there's probably, between people jumping in on the run and
over 100.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So that there's a lot of people that come out. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that are going to be crewing and
pacing and yep.
Yeah.
And it's a fundraiser too. So what I do is we get a few people each kick in $112 because everything's $112.
Yeah.
So they each kick in $112 as sponsors to pay for the cost of the race. And then everybody pays $112 entry fee. And then we donate 100% of the entry fee to Connecticut Forest and Parks, which is the organization.
Oh, that's awesome. So they won't come after you for all these people running out there.
Correct. I mean, they don't know anything about this, so they're But no, if you ever wanted to make it legit, then you have established a relationship. Oh, definitely. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean,
so
we all recognize just the difficulty.
But that's awesome. Yeah, you might as well. I mean, it's a run for fun. Like I tried to, donate and try to raise money for certain things, and it's like when you want to do it on established trails like that, that's a great way because it's all volunteers. They don't have that much staff that works these things.
Exactly.
It's like anything to do with the park, BML land, anything with the forest. It's like, they have so many volunteers, but it's like they got to raise a lot of funds to put certain things out there. And like you want a restroom in a location, it's like takes forever, red tape for them to even get money. So donations are always a huge thing, and it's for a good cause.
Yeah. No, and it really is. And to me, that's kind of what the whole thing's about, is making people aware
and
of the
bettering,
trail.
Making the trail be maintained and, making it for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah. Right on. So when did you first get the idea? Did you have a definite goal of running 100 milers?
No.
It just kind of
happened. I was running a lot. And one day I was like, oh shit, like I think it was 2012. I was like, I'm getting up there because somebody mentioned it to me. Like I don't pay attention and look at my thing. I know I do. I've done a lot of ultras and occasionally, like I just recently started looking at that because I was like, oh, I'm at 333 and that's my number. And I just finished my 333rd ultra across the years. So I was like, yay. Wow. So, but somebody was like, oh, you're getting pretty close. You're like at 80 something or I think I was at 85. And I was like, oh, I think I can get this done in the next couple of years. So yeah, it wasn't something I was like trying to do or even know. Like, I think I only had heard of, God, what was his name from Germany? He was like the first person to do it. And now they've found other people like that have done like multi-day things and use that as 100, which is fine. Like, there's still not that many people. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people trying to go for it now. Like, getting close, or they're at like 60 and they want to get to 100, and it's like, so they're working towards it. But it wasn't something I actively thought about, like one day I'm going to do, but now I'm trying to think I would like to get 5,200 miles because I'm at like 20. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you could do that.
I know, I think I could, with between multi-day races. Yeah, I think I could. I'm pretty sure I could. Yeah.
So I have to bring us to a topic that that Celeste is just like drooling about over there.
Puppies.
We gotta talk.
We need dogs.
We gotta talk about puppies. So tell us about the first dog in your life. What was the first dog?
My very first dog in my life was a wiener dog named Oscar Mayer Wiener. So actually, let me backtrack. So my ex-boyfriend, who both of us were arrested on drugs, we were living at his parents' house, and his parents were the one that were wiener dog people. But he grew up as a kid in Canada with wiener dogs. So he's always had these miniature dachshunds in his life. So when I got together with him, they had this one that was deaf, blind, and she had cancer. And she literally, I was afraid of this dog. It would come after me when I'm walking down the hall and bite my ankles, and it had no teeth, but I was like terrified. So that was my first experience with a wiener dog. So she ended up passing away. And, I wasn't close to her. I just thought, God, that dog is so mean. It hates me. But it was just sick and old. It was like 17 years old. So they ended up getting another wiener dog through a rescue, and her name was Dee Dee. So that was like the first introduction to like me falling head over heels for a wiener dog. So I did everything with that dog. So I would take her out, and even right when I got sober, I would take her on walks and stuff. And me and my boyfriend broke up, and so I would get weekend visitations with her. And then finally he goes, you know what, I'll pay half for a puppy for you. So I ended up getting Oscar Mayer Wiener, my little red wiener dog. And he used to go on hikes and stuff with me. He was my recovery guy. So when I go on my runs, because he was around when I first started training for my marathon.
Sure.
So I'd come home after my runs, and then I would take him for like a 3-mile walk, in my recovery. So he was around then, and he was around when I was training too, because I got him shortly. I guess I got him early on in my recovery. So he saw me become a runner. He was my little guy. So he didn't run much, and he ended up passing away. And then I got a dog named Rocky, who was kind of a runner, and he was a mixed Dachshund Jack Russell Terrier. And he ended up passing away. I got him through a rescue, and he would do like 3 to 5 miles. He was good for. And then I decided I don't want any more dogs right now. It's just too hard after losing him. And I was renting a room from a good friend of mine, and he was really attached to Rocky. And he goes, and he had just retired from Lockheed. And I go, hey, you know what? There's this dachshund rescue. Maybe we should foster. And so he agreed. I agreed. And so the first dachshund that came, he was not even a dachshund guy to begin. I mean, he liked dogs, but he goes, what should I do? I like this dog and I want to keep her. I go, well, then adopt her. So we had a bunch of them come, and then Truman came in 2012, and he was afraid of everything. So I get this message. I'm out like doing a run in Yosemite, and he's like, when you come home tonight, there's going to be this little, dog, Truman, and he's afraid of everything. He's hiding under the couch. You're going to have to pull him out to try to get him to eat. He goes, I can't do anything with him. He's afraid of everything. And he goes, and the foster woman who came and dropped him off said that he's afraid of men. He goes, so you may have to deal with him. So I came home, and I looked behind the couch, and I was like, oh, poor little guy. So I sat and had food out, and he wouldn't come. I put little pieces of food, and I was like, God, he's not even coming for the food. So I sat there for an hour, and he kind of kept peeking out. So finally I was like, he's not going to come out. I have to take him out. And so I took him out, and I, read his bio, and he came from a boarding house of 22 dachshunds, and she had to get rid of a bunch of dogs. So she got rid of 2 moms with puppies, him and another older one. So, and Jerry saw him, and I kept saying, oh, one day I want to get a dapple dachshund. And that was my old roommate. So secretly he's like, what kind of dog is that one? And the lady's like, it's an Isabella dapple. And he goes, well, let's foster this one. So he was secretly, he even tells me to this day, I was secretly trying to find you a dog. So, because I couldn't say, no, I don't want one. And we had all kinds of cute ones come. And I'm like, no, I trained them and I would run with them and I'd get them so they would be able to go into be adopted and they were set and okay. And so I did that with Truman. So I got him to the point where I could get him out front. He was afraid to even walk out the front door. So I was like, I can't obviously walk him over to the trail, which is only a mile away, because he won't walk. He's afraid of every freaking noise outside. He's never been outside. So one day I decided, you know what? Because I had worked with him sitting in the front yard, like for the car, because we lived on a busy street. So I sat out on the porch and got him to the point where he wouldn't bury himself into me. He kind of would sit, but he was still with the tail tucked. Like he lived with his tail tucked under his butt for a couple of years. He was that fearful of stuff. So I drove him over the trailhead and I thought, I'm going to put him down and see if he follows me, get through the gate. I'm going to start running and see if he follows me. Because all he would do was just stop. Like he wouldn't move. If he was afraid of things, his mechanism was lockdown and just stay there in a ball. And so I started running and he started following me. And I was like, whoa, so I started training him and working with him. And I was like, and it got to the time to where I got him, where I could get him where he was comfortable around some strangers, okay, around dogs. Like he wasn't violent. He was just a very mellow dog, but he was just fearful. And I thought, Jerry's like, you got to write up the bio now, for adoption. So I write up this thing and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I could go ahead and, find a suitable adopter and he's probably going to sit in somebody's house and like an older person because he's so mellow and just sit in their lap. And that's how he's going to live the next, he was 6.5, the next 6.5 years of his life. And I thought, I want this guy. I have a connection. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, he's going to have the best next 6.5 years of his life. So I decided to adopt him and make him my own. And so started training him. He ran at 10K pretty much after I adopted him. We was already training. So got him like running. I never thought he was going to be able to run long distance. I didn't think about that when I was training him, but I'm like, I'll just take him a little bit longer each time. So he got him up to half marathons. And then this is all on trail. This is not on road because he didn't like cars. So it was like he came alive on the trail. And the more we ran, I was like, how much further can he go? And so after having him for a year, he did like his longest run was a 20 miler. And then the next year he did a marathon. And then I was like, you know what? He's ready for a 50K. So he was doing regularly 20 milers with me. I would do it every other week, like a long run. And he did like fast packing with me out on the trail where we spent overnight running and sleeping under a small tent. And so, yeah, Truman became the ultra running doxy. And he ran 5 50Ks, all at over like 7 or 8 years old, and he recently passed away in 2022 at 16 years and 7 months. He had congestive heart failure. And I knew like the year before, like he had always had like an enlarged heart since we moved here, like when we moved to Bishop in 2018, I think they started seeing that he had an enlarged heart. And it ended up where his heart actually didn't end up killing him. He ended up was having seizures and he had a stroke and he ended up passing away. I had to have the vet come over, but I was like, his heart never stopped. So he was my, and then I thought, so I hadn't met with let me just tell you a quick story. So I met with a dog psychic before he passed away because I already knew, like, my vet was like, you got to decide. Like, he is not getting better. He was on oxygen all the time. We had a little mask at the house. He'd go to the oxygen chambers at the vet. Like, he was never going to get better. Like, he went into congestive heart failure and they said he's going to live 9 months, but he lived like 13 months. So, because he was just pretty healthy, but the last month of his life, it goes like that when they get it. So, and I was keeping him alive just by everything I was doing and knowing, like, how do I know when it's time to let him go? And so I thought, yes, I'm going to talk to somebody. And my boss, she knew of a psychic, and she does dog psychic stuff too. And so she came over to my house and she communicated with him and was telling me all this stuff that she knew nothing about me, that he was telling her and showing her, which I was just like amazed because I'm like, I totally believe in all of this. And she kept telling me he wasn't going to leave me, that he was worried and that I had to decide, and he trusted my decision when it was ready to go. And she kept telling me, he's going to send you somebody. He said there's going to be another dog and he's going to be dark. I was like, huh? I was like, okay, and I knew eventually I would probably get another dog. And she kept saying, she goes, he keeps saying the name Forest. I go, you mean like the mountains in the forest? And she goes, no, Forest. And I was like, Forest? And my friend Andy was there. And after she left, I go, he was telling me the name of the dog that I'm going to have. His name is going to be Forest, but I call him Forrester for a pass that's close by to here. So, but we call him Forest for short, and Run, Forest, Run. So
very good. Yeah.
He ended up, so he had this stroke, like he kept having these seizures, and I had taken him to the vet because I had to get my other dog, Whitney, shots. And I was going to see the cardiologist the next day. And Joel looked at me and looked at Truman, and he goes, Catra, he goes, we got to talk to you tomorrow about this. Because he was like so skinny. Like I was not doing him any good, but I was put him in the stroller every day. And that same day, that night out on the trail, he was out walking a little bit and he toppled over like he was going to have a seizure, and he had a stroke because I put him back in the stroller and he wasn't moving. He was still breathing. And I called my vet, and my vet came over and he did a hair, and he was in my arms. And so I felt good having communication with him before he passed. And I think that made it a little easier, but obviously it was hard because he was my soul dog. And so 12 days later, this random lady, I was like looking at little wiener dogs, and I was like, oh, I want to get a rescue, but I was like looking at puppies. And she had messaged me because a year before I went on a list because I knew I wanted to get a female, but then I ended up getting another rescue, Whitney, for my other dog, Baxter. So I have all these wiener dogs. I know it's confusing, but Baxter, it was just Baxter and Truman. And then Truman, when he got really sick, he became more aggressive towards Baxter. And Baxter was a puppy when we got him, and he was 10 months old from a 96 dog puppy mill. So I thought, yeah, it was horrible. So I thought we need to get another one at some point for him. So he, because Truman's he's being a little funky old man the last year of his life. So we got Whitney at 10 months old from also another person from a from the same rescue I got all of them from. And anyways, so when Truman passed away, like 12 days later, I had been on this thing looking at, I was always like, it was like a year waiting list for a puppy. So I was like, oh, I could just put my name on there. And this woman messages me and she goes, I have these puppies. She goes, I have a female. And I go, oh, no, I'm not. And Truman was still alive at this point. And I go, oh, I don't want a female anymore. I do want a boy, but it's going to have to be like November, because I knew Truman, this is September, and I knew he was going to pass away at some point, within the month. I had to make the decision. So she goes, okay, I'll get a hold of you in October. Or November. And so he passed away. And then 12 days later, she messages me with pictures of these four little boy puppies. And I thought, that's weird. I told her like not until November. Like she knew, I told her Truman was sick. I told her my whole story. And then I messaged her back and I go, oh, and his first picture of Forster was the one I saw, and I was like, oh my God, Phil, look. I go, no, I shouldn't. And two of my friends were here, which was a bad thing. They're like, oh, he's sending you a sign. Like everybody was like, and I go, no. And so I messaged her and I go, we could fly and look at them because my boyfriend Phil has planes and he was in Southern California. And I go, but I want to see all the boys. I want to see all four of the boys. And so she goes, well, they're actually not my dogs. She goes, they're my aunt's dogs. So let me give you her number. And she gives me her number. And so I called this woman, Patty, up, and we're having a conversation. My sister's name is Patty, too. And then I mentioned that I ran ultras, and she goes, oh, my daughter does those crazy 200. And I go, what? And so I felt like it was another sign. I'm like, are you kidding me? And she goes, why? Do you do those too? And I go, yeah. And she goes, well, my daughter's only ran one. Yeah, she goes, she ran Moab. And I go, I've run that 4 times. And so I didn't run it that year, but I finally met her daughter last year. And so, yeah, I felt it was meant to be. So
yeah,
anyways,
sounds like a lot of things connected.
Yeah. And we flew out. And so now to go to the forward with the story. So now I have Forrester, and he is 16 months old now. And he ran 17 miles last week. It's his long run.
Wow.
So he's another running doxy. He will be an ultra runner too. And there's no, like, this guy runs. Like, Truman would stay next to me and follow me because he would do what I would do. But this guy, I can't keep up with. If I take him off leash, I'm like, he's going to get away and I can't catch him.
Have you run into other dachshunds that are runners, like other people who have running dachshunds?
Runners actually are now getting dachshunds, and they come to me asking me how they train their dog to run. Of
course.
Or they have dachshunds that they go, I just found out who you were, and I didn't even think about taking my little wiener dog for a run.
No.
But
Yeah.
I go, you know what? I go, they can run. And I've met other people that hike with them. Like there's this woman that has a website that she hikes with her wiener dogs all in the mountains, and there's a couple people here that hike with theirs too. So, you know, as long as you get a vet clearance, get their spines x-rayed, you know, every couple of years, get their hips x-rayed, there's nothing wrong. Even my vet, like I've changed so many veterinarians' minds of those are poster childs of back injuries. But they told me, you know what? You're right. They're on the ground running as long as you're not letting them jump up high stuff. Like, you know, they know their abilities and just not repetitively. They can go up mountains just fine, and you know, and they're really agile about twisting and turning and going around stuff. So, you know, it's better to make them run than to have them sit there and be fat and feeding them. Like most wiener dogs are overweight.
They a lot of them tend to be. So I mean, you have to think of like Toy Story, right? Like in that wiener dog you wouldn't fuck with him, right? I mean, that's all shit's on.
Well, you wouldn't fuck with my little guy either. He's pretty ballsy, and I'm like, I gotta watch it. Like he's ready to attack a big dog, and I'm like, we gotta, you know, I have to recorrect him with treats and really work with him because I don't want him, you know, it's like, you're not that big, and it's because other big dogs have come at him when he was a puppy, and it's like then you got to change that, you know. But when it's just me and him, it works out really well. When he's with all three of the dogs and we're together, he tries to be the bossy one. And like, if anybody's around, he's like, you're not going to get near my people.
Now,
but he's going to be quite the runner.
I think at one point Truman had some eye issues too, right?
Yes,
maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you dealt with that.
And that's why he wore the goggles. So he
let's not just roll over that. Like that's why he wore the goggles. Like
I know people are like, oh, he's trying to be stylish. No, he had to. So when we lived in the Bay Area, there was a lot of branches, like low to the, like living in the desert, you don't have that here. In the mountains where I run, you don't have that. Everything is tall. It's like trees, you know, not a lot of shrubs. So in the Bay Area, there was a lot of poison oak shrubs, things like that, just along the trail that's overgrown. And he would run into stuff and get poked in the eye. So he had a couple of different eye surgeries. And the last eye surgery he had was because he ran into my trekking pole and it poked him and scratched his cornea. Oh, so they had to literally sew and I didn't know there was such thing as a third eyelid. So they sewed this like piece of skin from the dog's eyelid. They have a third eyelid, and it just looks like, you know, they pull his eyeball out. Like I was like, oh my God, what? And he goes, don't be afraid. He goes, it's okay. He goes, it acts like a Band-Aid when their cornea is healing. So he goes, if you can get him to wear goggles, this, you know, because he's getting too many different eye injuries. They're like constant, like, and he had light colored eyes, so his eyes were very sensitive. So that's how he started wearing the goggles and the doggles, and it definitely helped. And people were just like, they're like, look at that with the goggles. And as he got older, he wore them to protect because he had such sensitive eyes. And all mine are trained to wear them too, but they don't have to wear them unless we're in the snow, you know, where it's blinding. But none of them have gotten any eye injuries.
One of my little guys has a dog ophthalmologist.
What happened to his eyes?
Well, so he was a rescue from a hoarder also. He was like one of 30-something dogs. And he was a stud because he's a Yorkshire Terrier.
Yep.
And he was locked in a cage his whole life. So he was neglected, you know. And so he had and little dogs, they have teeth issues. So
that's like Truman had no teeth.
Well, exactly. So he had a bunch of his teeth removed before we got him, and then we had to have more removed, and the infection went into his eyes. Oh, and so his eye was like, so he's had to go for like all sorts of, you know, eye drops and whatever. After a couple of years, he's much better now. He only has to go like once every couple of years to be checked up. And luckily he didn't lose his eye. He still has his sight and everything, but And they're
you should
little.
get him some goggles. Get him the rec specs.
Well, and so, because your dogs are little too. Like he's 5 pounds. So
yeah, he's tiny.
Oh yeah, he's tiny. His eye is right next to, there's no room for the infection. So it went right into his eye. So, I mean, my big dog is 7 pounds. So.
Oh, so that's how Forrester's like 8.6.
Yeah. My cat that is looking at me here that I had to go like open the door for. My cat is 20 pounds.
Oh my God. My sister had a 20-pound cat too. Bigger than all my dogs.
It's so funny. Both of my dogs together.
I have a laser pointer here just to entertain him.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. To entertain him.
Now he's like giving me he's like a mountain lion. I should show him to you.
He's going to attack you in your sleep.
Yeah.
All right. Totally different subject, but I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you one with the tattoos? Do they have meaning or is it just art?
They do. They all have meaning.
Okay.
They do. Yeah. But I mean, they're morphing into one, but they're like each individual thing has something. It means something. Yeah. It would be hours. That would be a whole episode.
How about
what's your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
My favorite are probably my two sugar skulls on my thighs. And one is like purple and kind of black with the spider webs and stuff on it. It is like how I used to be, goth. And then the other one is all colorful with rainbow colors on it. So it's how I am now. So those two. And then I'm going to get one of Truman too. So that's my next one. And it's going to have that Dr. Seuss quote, smile, don't cry because it happened. Or don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened.
Oh, I love that.
That's my favorite dog quote. I found that when my dog Rocky died. And I'm like, someday. So I have an area on my leg. I'm going to put him. And then on my right thigh, I don't have anything at the very, very top on the side. I'm going to put all 3 of my current dogs on there. So I just need to stop long enough to sit down, to not run, to let it I could
to let it heal. I get it.
Yeah. This is a perfect time. But it's like, I don't want to lay there for 5 hours.
Lately, I've been doing hallucinations that I have on the trails. I've been getting those.
Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, I like that.
Celeste has a famous story of when she went to pet a fox.
It was the middle of the night. There was a fox on the trail. I mean, what would you do? You pet it. It was so cute. And it ended up being a rock. And I cried for like 3 hours. Yeah. I was very sad. So I got the fox on my arm because every time I see a fox now, people are like, okay, you are hallucinating. So.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm one of those psychos that if I see a wild animal, I would pet it. Like if I could.
So what was the first tattoo that you ever got?
It's an Egyptian symbol for protection, the Eye of Horus. I can't get to it. I don't think. Is it over here? Yeah, it's way up high. I can't get it up. So yeah, and then I got my zodiac sign for Capricorn. Okay. So, but I got those when I was 19. So a long time ago. So I don't regret any of the ones I have. So cool. I would have had I got a lot more when I was younger. So all of these were done sober except for those 2. I would say. Was I sober then? No, I wasn't. So I was heavily into drinking back then when I got those 2. But I don't regret anything I have. So.
Gotcha. And what was the last one that the most recent one that you got?
The most recent one I got was right before I moved to Bishop. Where is it? I have to look at it to see. It's a little Hello Kitty.
Hello Kitty.
Yeah, it's a Hello Kitty, and she's wearing bib number 200. It was after I did my second triple crown or my first triple crown of 200. And then it says, be brave and keep going. And then there's a picture of Mission Peak where I used to run because I was moving to Bishop. So I got this right before I moved to Bishop. So it was from doing the triple crown. And then it says, be brave and keep going. Because I found this little pendant that I have hooked on one of my packs that I found when I did the Cocapelli crawl race. It was a multi-day stage race. And I got one for my friend and one for me. And so I'm like, one day I'm going to use that quote, put it on me. So in case I lose my pendant, I have it on here.
I love it.
Thank you.
Gotcha. So I'd like to. One thing that really impressed me was how vulnerable that you continue to be in sharing what's, like we talked about in the beginning, and kind of sharing what's going on. And I know that when you lost Truman, that was a very, I could just, oh gosh, I I have to say, I've never spoken to you before, but I really felt like your pain and like how, I've certainly lost people in my lives and lost best friends and family members and things like that. But I could really sense your grief. And I wonder if you could kind of talk about maybe where you are with that and what that
Sure.
is like now and what it was like.
So for me, I've lost a lot of people in my life, but the hardest loss I've ever suffered was losing him. It may sound crazy, but I think it's because our pets rely on us and they don't talk back to us. And it's like we don't have any anger ever towards them or any issues, like we do towards humans, I guess, or whatever.
Mm.
But they rely on us for everything. So, and he was, I always say, tell everybody, he was my soul dog. Like there will be never another Truman. Like I've had other dogs and I love them and I was sad when they passed, but nothing like Truman. And it literally, like a whole year, I was just like lost. Even though I got Forrester shortly after, I just, I kept looking at him and thinking, I'm not comparing them or expecting them. And I had two other dogs too, but I'm just like, he was just my everything. Like he was, even through his senior years, even when he couldn't run far, he'd still go and do his little trot 3 miles a day. I mean, he was doing that, but up until he got diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And they're like, don't take him up at the altitude, just go a couple miles easy with him. But he was still doing his trot and
Couple
running.
miles
And
easy.
and I got in such a dark place. I was so depressed. I didn't ever want to drink or do drugs, but
Mm.
you get to those deep, dark thoughts and you're like, I can't live without him. I don't want to live. I got other dogs. I don't want to be here. You just go back and forth. And
Mm.
and I have the tools to know that that's just chatter in my head. Like I know eventually I'll be okay. But I felt like at the time for a whole entire year that I was not okay. I didn't want to be around people. I showed up to a couple of races and I just didn't want to be there. And, even up until when I ran Tahoe last year, it's just like I dropped. I was just like, I got so depressed and I knew I didn't want to be there. I
Mm.
don't want to explain to people or talk about it and it wasn't any, people mean well, but it was just like it was like I was lost. There was something, my part of my soul was missing. And so once that 1 year celebration of losing him, of him leaving us, it was like it clicked. Like I was out running and crying and doing a Truman run. And I was like, wait, like, why am I living in a loop of the last month of his life? I literally was in this time warp of a loop of just obsessing about that 1 month and what could have I done the day he died? What could have I done to keep him longer? It was only a whole month. And I was like, why am I living in one whole month when I had this whole 10-year span with him of amazing, amazing, fun things? Like, and it clicked then, like, he doesn't want you to be living like that. Like, you're not living. It's like, are you going to live the rest of your life being depressed and, and have all this anxiety and depression over this? And it's like, it was like it clicked. I stopped living in that loop. And it's
Mm.
weird. I don't know how to explain it. And people ask me, like, that have recently lost pets, like, how did you get through it? And I said, I didn't. It just took it takes everybody different amount of time, I guess. And I go, I never thought that I would be over, like, move beyond like the sadness. And I still get sad. And I mean, at that point, I could hardly look at memories of him. Like now, it's a little bit hard sometimes, but I go, no, open up your memories this time of this year, 2 years ago now, because he's been gone for a year now. So I don't have that memories, but moving past everything that he was, that whole year, once I stopped living in that loop, I became okay. And I was like, yeah, I mean, and I talked to a therapist, and they
Oh,
gave me
good.
advice and things, but I was like, no, nobody ever told me to stop living in the loop because they didn't understand. It's like
Yeah.
it clicked. It really clicked out on a run because I mean, I run every day because I have my running streak, but I had a hard time just going. I'm like, why? What am I doing? Why am I going? I was like, I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me, but I was just like in such a horrible state and space, for I'd go in and out of it. But
I
I
mean,
really have to say that 1 year mark, it was like it clicked. And then I looked at Forrester and I looked at my other dogs and I'm like, this is not okay. Like you have three other animals that want your attention, and especially, I mean, Forrester and Whitney are always with Phil, my boyfriend, but I had, Forrester, it's like I got to train this guy, and I knew right off the bat, like everything he did, he doesn't know how to walk. He's a runner. He doesn't walk across the house. I'm not joking. It's
he's
like
like
I've
you as an
never
early
met a
runner, right?
crazy dog like
Hmm.
him. I'm like, he literally dashes through the house. I've never seen him just like walk, meander. Like Truman would just walk, nice pace. This guy's like, and you're like, slow down. So Truman knew I needed him to help
Hmm.
me heal. And so it all clicked. And now you know, I'm really bonding with him. Like we're like, he's crazy, he's nutty. And, I'm like, Truman really sent me the right dog because he's like a handful.
Yeah,
So,
it is something like I think it's very common to feel um the question. Like actually my dog Izzy, who's been on the podcast, because Izzy we would record in my living room, and Izzy, we'd close the door and Izzy would just come up and butt her head up and just all of a sudden walk up and just come up and and say hi to everybody. And Izzy was a black lab, and just she got to the point where she just couldn't walk and couldn't remember to go outside when she went to the bathroom, and was just just some like reach some points. And I think that when, like you said, that we're as somebody who's responsible for that life, like
yeah, we're the caregivers.
yeah, like in some ways it's like it's first of all, I feel a responsibility to do everything I could. Like, did I walk him enough? Did I take care of him enough? Or did I let him live too long just because I didn't want to deal with
Be alone,
that,
exactly.
having him put down? And I think at the end of the day, I kind of feel like the way that it happened, I did the best that I could with it. And like, I feel like I know that Izzy would just like forgive the shit out of me for whatever I fucked up. Like, it's like,
Yeah, that's how I feel about Truman. He would have wanted to leave earlier, but I'm with him with putting oxygen masks on him. He can't even move. He's in a diaper. I have to carry him everywhere. Like,
yeah,
that's not I wouldn't want I would want somebody to let me go if I was like that. But like you said, it's just hard to know. And, unless you have a senior dog, and he was my first senior dog. And the first time, my other ones died, like Rocky died 11 unexpectedly. And Oscar was like 7.5 after surgery. He had leg surgery. And then it was like shortly after that, he passed away. I think complication from the anesthesia. It was sudden too. So I never had a dog where I had to like watch them deteriorate or watch them grow old and get senile and go in circles and go in the corner. And like, I would read up on everything, and I'm like, what, I need to give him this, or I need to give him that, and more fish oil, more of this, And it wasn't until like when they literally, the vet know, like, especially with the congestive heart failure, and then he's got this dementia and he can't take other medications, for the stress of the dementia because it would affect his heart. He was on all these medications. And even my vet to this day, he goes, he definitely lived way longer than I thought. Because his cardiologist said 9 months. And my vet, who I'm good friends with, Joel, who's the runner, and he was like, I thought he would live like 6 months. He goes, the decline. He goes, but every time I'd see him, he's like, you're doing whatever, and he's doing okay. You're taking him out. So.
But I'm at least 3 years past
when your dog passed away.
Yeah, and it's still an issue that we,
deal with.
yeah, we always
we'll always have a little guilt or whatever, or like you said, did you keep, is he alive too long, or should everything I watched after, they're like, if there's more bad days than good days, then that's when you go. Let them go on a good day. And I did a bucket list with him. So like I told my vet Joel the last month, like I knew, like every week I'm like, okay, Joel, come over on this day, and then I'd call him. No, I don't want to. So I did a bucket list thing, and I'm like, I'm going to take him up to 9,000 feet at Lake Sabrina on a boat ride. I'm like, is it okay? And he goes, anything you do with him at this point, Catra, is okay. He goes, if he dies up at Lake Sabrina at the high altitude on a boat ride, it's a beautiful place. He's like, give him chocolate, give him whatever he wants,
Yes.
And so I was doing all these things with him until the end. And it's like, and when he wasn't eating, I was giving him whatever he wanted. And like every day I would try to get a hamburger or what, and he was to the point where he was not eating anything. I mean, early on he would eat whatever I gave him. And then, so it's hard.
Yeah. Huh.
But I'm just happy he was in my life, that he chose me for 10 years until he had to go and make room for Forrester. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how I've gotten through all the losses of my dogs. I'm like, if that one didn't leave, if Oscar didn't leave, then I wouldn't have met Rocky. And if Rocky didn't leave, I would have never met Truman, and if Truman didn't leave, I would have never met Forrester.
Now, did you ever feel that losing Truman kind of brought back any memories of when you had the loss with your dad, or
no,
kind of different things?
Yeah, because he's been gone so long, and it's like the mostly when I think of my dad is when I'm running, because he was a runner. So I always say I use my angels as my pacers when I'm out in like a 200. So I talk to them a lot, and I always visualize like, wow, if my dad was alive, he would be the one crewing me. It's like things like that. But I was so young. It's like 17 years old. I hardly knew him. It's like when you've lived so much longer, it's like, it's, so long ago. I miss having him seeing what I accomplished, but I know he's seeing it. He saw it, and that's the way I got that from him. I got that, athlete in me from him, because he was the athlete. So.
Gotcha. It's something though, because it is, I think at that age though, things can still like stay with you pretty, or for me at least, they stay with me. Like I got sober when I was 18 because one of my good friends got killed in a car accident. And it's still, even I can't even talk about it now. Like, just I mean, I can talk about it, and I do talk about it, but not without feeling some sadness of what could have been. So
my best friend died like 2 months after my dad died too, and she was driving drunk, and she was away at college, and she was quite the partier, and she was driving up a windy road to go to her parents' house, and she went off the road and died.
Wow.
Instantly. But she was drinking and driving. So
yeah, gotcha. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I think that each one of these things good, whether we're prepared and expect the loss or whatever, I think, those are things that make us who we are,
Yep. And we have the memories of those people. And when they're not here, I always utilize, my friends that have passed. When I'm out on the trail, I'm like, I'm doing this for all those people that are no longer here on this earth with us, or the ones that are suffering in whatever issues they're having right now. So whenever I do a race, I think of them, and people will say, how do you get through these things? And I go, well, the reason I don't quit is because I think I'm lucky. I chose to be out here. Like some people would change, positions with me in a minute. And, people suffering, going through chemotherapy or something, they'd rather be running 200 miles than going through what they're going through. So it's like, we got to do that to keep helping them and showing them to get through it. Look, you can get through anything, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. If somebody was, or if somebody were um, wanting to, like, what general advice would you, or if you have any, and maybe you don't because everybody's so different, or like, what sort of advice might you have for somebody who's looking to take their, to get their dog into running? Usually I'm asking people, so if you're going to try your first 100
Yeah.
miler, what would you do? What would you
Well, to get
do?
their dog into running, first of all, I mean, depending on the breed, but you always want to obviously go to the vet,
Uh-huh.
consult with them. You never want to start running your dog before they're fully grown. And with smaller dogs, it's like a year. Bigger dogs could be like 14, 16, 18 months, depending upon the breed,
Mhm.
because their joints aren't all formed together or fused together. So you want to definitely get an x-ray before you start them into a running program to make sure that everything is looking good and they don't, and that way you would know too if they have an underlying condition they were born with,
Hmm.
and that might make it worse, and so, but then just start them like you would how you started running, take them on walks, once
Get
they're
out.
a
Hold
year
it.
old,
Wait.
like I said.
Start like I did. Like
Well,
get
don't
really
dive into
pissed.
it.
Almost drive your car off the road because some
No.
girl's screwing you over, and then go and run around a track in cowboy boots.
No,
That's how
don't do
you.
that. Don't do it like that.
Is that what we're
Don't teach the
talking
dog like
about?
that. Take them
Oh,
on like a little
okay.
run walk
Too
program.
much
So I would
information,
say
maybe.
most dogs can do 3 miles. So if you start them off by like running 10 minutes, walking 10 minutes, running 10 minutes, kind of like that.
Hmm.
I mean, unless you're Forrester and you never walked a day in your life. Like I
Hmm.
couldn't do anything. Like the minute I was able, once he got all his parvo shot vaccines and all of that, when I was able to finally take him on the trail, Joel, my vet's like, don't run him. And I'm like, Joel, I'm not running him, but he runs the whole time we're walking. He is running literally, and he's like, don't run him. So, but with that said, too, he had an underlying condition that showed up at 3 months old, and it's called luxating patella, where his patella slips out. So he looks like he's skipping when he's running, and he will
Hmm.
have surgery for that. But his orthopedic surgeon said he can run as much as he wants until then. He goes, it's not affecting him because he was born with it. So it's not an injury that he got. It's just a weird thing where he skips and he's not in any pain or anything. Because people are like, why is he skipping? And I'm like, he's totally fine. He has luxating patella. And
He's showing
yeah,
And
off.
it
so he will
pops
have,
back in,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
they're fine. Yeah, Bear
that's
has
why
it too.
yeah. So a lot of dogs, small dogs have it. And I didn't know
Yeah,
this until I had him. So I
same
immediately
thing,
let
because
the
I
breed,
immediately went to the vet.
and it's from breeding too. And I let the breeder know who I got the puppies from, like, do not breed those parents ever again because my dog has luxating patella and it's a genetic thing.
Right.
So they were like, thank you, because the other ones didn't have it. So, and
Hmm.
like I said, immediately I went to, the orthopedic surgeon at my vet's, and I'm like, can we get surgery now? And it was like, I was ready to do it. Like right when I found out he had it, I'm like, he's going to be a runner. And he goes, oh, I heard all about you from Joel. And he goes, yeah, he could do it. We'll x-ray him. So he's going to x-ray him again in March. And he was going to do it then I thought, no, I'll wait until like November, so
Yeah.
then he'll go through winter because of recovery for him. I'd rather let him run. But he said at this point, he
It's
can
not
run
any
as much as he wants.
painful. That my
No,
vet
and
said the
it's
same
not.
thing. It's not painful.
His
And
his
Bear's
is
not a
not at all.
runner, so
Yeah. And
yep.
this guy's been running from day one. Like
Yeah.
I thought when I first noticed that he had it, I was like, oh, he must have sand in his paws. It was raining and he was out, or no, it was 6 months. 6 months when it showed up. We were out he runs when he walks, so he was like doing the skip thing, and I go, oh, he's got sand in his paws, and then I took him in, and Joel x-rayed him. He goes, let me watch him. I mean, I don't even think he x-rayed him. He watched him run around, and he goes, oh, he has luxating patella, and then he twisted it around, and he goes, he's not in pain, and he got checked already again this year, and then like I said, March we're going to do x-rays and then set up our surgery for sometime this year. So.
Yeah.
But they said that, if everything goes good, he'll be fine. He'll be able to run, He won't probably run as long as Truman, but even both Joel, my vet Joel, and the orthopedic surgeon said he could run until he's like 9 years old, probably before it starts, wearing down again and where it bugs him. And I said, that's fine, as long as he's not in pain.
Awesome.
It's funny what we will go through for our puppies.
I know. Yeah, I was like, why? Why do I get one he was born with a crooked tail too. Like when I saw him, she told me right off the bat, she goes, I have to warn you, he was born with a bent tail. And then my vet, Joel, told me, he goes, a lot of little dogs, when they're crammed in there, he goes, it's not unusual for small dogs to be born with broken tail. So his has like a little crook in his tail. So it goes down and then up. Yeah, so it's like a little crook. People are like, oh, did he break his tail? And I go, yeah, in the womb. But they sometimes have to amputate. Like, Joel was like, oh, this isn't one of those cases that like it's never going to affect him. So he just has
Both
a little
of my dogs
in
came with the tail already. I would never do it.
cropped. Yeah.
Yeah. They
Well, if
came
it was
that
a
way.
problem with him, that he would have got his chopped off too. So he would have
Yeah.
been a wiener dog with a little nub.
Oh,
But
Jeez.
it's fine now.
So we actually feature dogs on our show quite often.
Oh, do you really?
We do. Well, we have something called the so let me ask you something, Catra. When you're out running on the trails, have you ever gotten a song stuck in your head?
Yeah, I do. Occasionally.
So what do you do when you get a song stuck in your head?
You sing it.
You sing it. That's right. You
Yeah.
sing it
Or
because
you hum it.
that
You're
helps
like,
you
why?
get.
And then you're like, why is this stuck in my head? Where did I hear it? I must have heard it somewhere. There's some subliminal thing here.
That's right. So we have something called the Cultra Karaoke Hotline.
Okay.
And it's basically a phone number that people call up when they get a song stuck in their head, and they sing the song, and then we play it on the podcast. And then after we play it on the podcast, we get the entertainment value, and they get the song out of their head.
Okay.
And people are thinking like, oh gosh, I'm going to be out running on the trails, and how am I ever going to remember the number to call, right? Because I have trail brain, and how am I going to do that? So it's pretty simple. It's the number for our Cultra Karaoke Hotline is 203-DOG-GENT, like a gentleman dog.
Okay. Dog gent.
Yeah, 203
good
dog gent. So I have to ask you, as a subject matter expert, when I say gentleman dog, what comes to mind with you? How do you picture a gentleman dog? Like,
how do I
would it look
picture
like?
a gentleman dog? Like what a dog would look like as a gentleman?
Yeah, what
Like
would a gentleman
top
dog
hat
look
and a bow tie.
Yeah. See,
Like
yeah.
Baxter. He has a little top hat and a bow tie.
You got to send us some pictures of that.
Yeah.
So
he was in a wedding. Him and Truman were actually in a wedding a couple of years ago. Out across the years, these two women got married, and could we have Truman and Baxter in the wedding? And they wore little tuxedos and top hats.
That is
I'll have
awesome.
to find the
that is
picture.
so cute.
But when I look at Baxter, he reminds me of a gentleman. He's a black and white, long-haired dachshund, and he looks very conservative. It's just the way he looks at you is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I always think he should have one of those like pipes with a little magnifying thing on the
like a
side.
monocle.
Monocle, yeah.
See, you're all over the gentleman dog. You're like,
yes, that's
you're
what I
not going
think
to
of.
forget the phone number. So it's 203 dog gent.
Dog gent. I got it.
Puppy.
Yeah, so you can call that anytime you want, and
Okay.
we'll play it on our show.
Write it down.
So,
I'll put it in my phone.
I'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, put it in there so I can make sure I have it.
Yeah.
So when I get a song in my head, I have to call.
That's right. That's
Is that
right.
the deal? Okay.
And it's just
That might
it's an
happen
answering
tomorrow.
machine. It can be any time. It can be the middle of the night.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
So it's not going to bug you. Okay.
Yeah, you don't
Well,
have
I'm
to
gonna
know
be-
all the words.
I'm doing
or
a
anything.
24-hour challenge tomorrow, so I may get a
Oh.
song or two stuck in my head. So
Tell us about this.
Nice.
What is it? Oh, is this it's
So I
not a
did-
40.
no, I did that last weekend.
Yeah.
So I already did that one. So
You did like
I've
the
done a bunch,
Goggins
like
40,
Yeah.
kind of like that.
4x4x48. So I did that last week. And
Yeah.
Forrester, by the way, did 4 of those runs on the first day and 2 on the next day. So that's how he did 17 miles that day.
Oh.
And then he did 2 more the next day. So tomorrow I decided, I should do the Yeti 50-mile challenge. But then I'm like, 8.2 miles every 4 hours. That's going to take up the whole time. Like I have to clean the house and do stuff in between. So I was like, I don't want to just do the 50K. So I came up with a 40-miler. So it will be 6.67 every 4 hours for 24 hours. So 6 runs.
Hmm.
And so That's what I came up with. And then the 2 night runs I'll do on the treadmill, and I'll have Forrester go out with me on the first 2 in the morning. So just for fun, because I'm still recovering from across the year 6 days where I ran 314 miles, and I have a 100-miler on the 3rd of February. So I'm like, I don't really want to go out and just run 40 miles around town. I go, if I do it every 4 hours, I can do stuff in between that I need to take care of. And then next week I'll do like a 35-mile training run when my friend Julia is there. So and the weather looks nice. Tomorrow's going to be 63 degrees. So
nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be 17 here.
Yeah.
It should be it's normally pretty cold this time of year. So I'm just going with it right now because it will happen.
Very good. So what 100-miler are you doing?
It's called Bootleg Boogie. It's a new one in Nevada near Lake Mead, so outside of Vegas. So yeah, it's on these trails around. It's the Bootleg Trails. It's called in Lake Mead. So it's going to be a looped course. I think we do 6 loops of whatever. So yeah, but it's all on single track trail. So and then you have the major start finish aid station. So there's like 8 every 6 miles, which is nice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That should be fun, and it's the first time event, so I'm going to do it, and my boyfriend's going to come out and do it. So we could just fly there in the plane, so we don't even have to drive. So it'll be nice.
That's nice.
That is cool. Like you're like the jet set, right?
No, I hate flying. Okay, let me tell you. He has 7 planes at the airport. He owns a flight school too. Not only does he work for Sierra Life Flight, he owns a flight school, so he's an instructor. And then he has like where you rent planes, like if you were going to rent a car. People rent planes; they have to go through the whole thing. But he owns a flight club. So, but I hate little planes, so I'm getting better. Like I like flying around here when I want to go look at my trails and see the JMT and go over Whitney. But then any kind of bumps, I'm like freaking out. So I'm getting much better. I'm getting so much better, and I've been flying since I was an infant. Like on big planes, I've even gotten freaked out. When I had to go to China, I was like, "Oh my God, how am I going to do this?" I can't.
Now, what did you go to China for?
100-mile race. That was back, 2017, 2018. It was Mount Golagong in China.
Okay.
So.
Now that wasn't where they had that. They had a big accident there, right? Like they sent people.
Oh no! That was somewhere else. Yeah, this was the first year they put this on, but UTMB owns it now. No, they didn't own it when I did it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah,
got you. What's your take on the whole UTMB stuff that's going on lately?
The Ironman UTMB thing. Yeah. I mean, what they've done, like that whole Gary Robbins thing was, just reading all of that was, I have no desire to run a race where there's a million bazillion people. Like I got invited to run the race, and I'm like, that's just too many people. Like I run Javelina, which is a lot of people. But it ends up thinning out, and it's not a UTMB race, and it's fun. It's a costume party, like we're in costume. So, but it just the stuff they're doing, in the United States, like people are pretty much boycotting it. I mean, I don't think in Europe they have a problem with it, but I get it. I get what they're doing to the small races and taking over all these races. I'm like thinking it's just a matter of time before they own everything. It's like Amazon. I worked for Whole Foods for 23 years. They came in and took over everything, and they change everything. Even though they say they're not changing anything, everything changes. So it's just, I just don't like what they've done to the small races and, taking up their space and doing, not nice things and just those big races like that, even like an Ironman. And, it's like I wouldn't run Leadville because of that. It's just like too many people.
Too much.
Just way too many people. I've paced there twice. There's certain races I just don't have a desire to do that. And something so big like that is just, it's out of control. A lot of the races in Europe are just like too many people. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm going to get knocked off the trail and die. You know what I mean?
That's not usually that's not something we look for, right? I mean,
So I think a lot of people are boycotting it. It seems like a lot of the big runners, the big, fast name runners are boycotting that. It's just this whole thing. You have to do all these only certain races now to be able to get into the race. So you have to do their races to get into the race.
That's right.
And it's
You don't
like,
talk. You don't
and they're
have your own friends
expensive.
anymore. You just hang out with my
No.
friends. I got a guy.
Yeah.
You go run
Yeah.
with him.
Like I said, I can run 100 miles and 200 miles on my own. I don't have to pay anybody if I don't want to.
Right on.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, it's always interesting to see just what happens when a lot of money gets put into something.
Exactly.
Because they have to spend it.
They say they're not changing anything, like, oh, we're not going to change anything, but everything changes. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. It's like when you buy out something like that and you have that kind of money, things change. And it's usually not for the better.
Yeah. You have to have organic growth with, when you have that much money,
I agree.
You can't just, you have to manufacture growth, and you have to and it's going to be like, it's like even like with a podcast, right? Like, what is the role here? Like, what do I want to do? I want to talk to the people that I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to, I don't want to just like have shows because I think that everybody's going to listen to them. I mean, or
you want it to be fun and just talk with your friends. And,
exactly.
And then people will listen, Yes.
And you know what? If they don't, then they're not interested in what we're talking about. I mean, I guess that's self-evident, but like that, and I'm okay with that.
If people want to follow me, they can follow me. If they don't like me, they don't like me. What are you going to do?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, but it's I don't know. It's always a struggle though. Just I always find just like, cause I'm so, I don't know, sometimes I get caught up in the other thing too momentarily. And then I'm like, God, why can't I be like Ginger Runner or, like grow like this big thing? And then I'm like, you know what? Oh, that's because you don't want to do that. And because you have like a life and a family and like other things and you want to actually run and you want to do all these other things.
Exactly. Exactly. Then you're not going to be able to be running and doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
You start having to let things go.
Yeah.
It's like.
So, focus on what matters. But, and I think conversations like we had tonight are what I'm interested in. So, so I guess like, thanks for joining us tonight. And
thank you for having me on. It was fun.
Catra.
Good conversation.
Honor
for sure.
to be able to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will be calling with the songs stuck in my head.
Yes. Now, one thing
203.
is that I hope
dog gen.
203 dog gen. Look at you.
Very good.
Like,
I forget shit really quickly.
You'll be getting a you'll be getting a tattoo of that pretty quick.
Yeah.
I'm just predicting that.
Well, maybe a tattoo of Baxter with his top hat and stuff.
Yeah.
That'll remind me of.
I'll tell you what. So we did a contest of Stefan, who's a guy with a company called Ragged Cuts, and he's just he makes awards and different things like that. He had a dog that he was very close to, and he had a picture of this dog, and so we used that dog as a I kind of put it out to the community and said, hey, let's come up with a logo for the Cultra Karaoke Hotline based upon this dog. So we have a whole bunch of pictures of this dog photoshopped into other things and kind of morphed, and I'll send you some of those.
Yes.
You might get a kick out of those.
Totally. Send me that. I would love it.
And actually now we have it in hats, and we have all sorts of
oh my God.
Our gear is all designed around his dog, now that I think about it. Right? I mean, actually, and it matches. Actually, it would match your hair. So,
awesome!
I should actually, I'm going to send you a hat if that's all right. I'll send you.
I would love it.
Yeah. So I'll have to get your
for sure.
address and stuff.
Yeah. Email. I'll email it to you. Just email.
Okay. Good deal.
Because we have each other's email.
Celeste, did you have any closing arguments?
I don't. Just thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
thank you
fun,
for sharing your story.
Anytime. I want to be able to help a lot of people, so sharing my story is always a good thing.
I think that from somebody who's looking how to do amazing things, you're a great inspiration that way. Somebody who's looking to
thank
be
you.
vulnerable and kind of share what's really going on. We got that too. How to go running. How to train a dog to run.
Dogs, yeah. Wiener dogs
You
can
should-
run far with 4-inch legs.
Yeah.
You should put a link for her book in the
Yes.
show notes because her book was very good.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have it on my website, CatraCorbett.com.
Okay. Yeah. And also, so on Twitter, it's is it Dirt Diva? Are you still on Twitter?
Dirt Diva, yeah.
I
Dirt
got
Diva
hacked, so.
3. I hardly ever use that. So I'm mostly on Instagram. And doing TikTok and stuff like that. But I cross post into my Facebook. But yeah, mostly the place to follow me is on Instagram. So that's Dirt Diva 333.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to all of our listeners out there, if you've made it this far, of course, seek professional help.
Exactly.
And we will see you all.
They're out on a long run, so this is perfect time.
That's
like
right.
A couple
That's
of hours.
right.
You got to listen to podcasts when you're running. That's the time to do it.
It absolutely is. And we'll see you all in a mile.
Mile and a half.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. And this is my big guy here.
That,
Momo.
oh my goodness, your little guy.
Yeah.
My sister's cat was that big. Fred. He was like 20 pounds. He couldn't even jump up on anything.
Yeah. Momo.
That's
A big boy. How old is he?
He's, we got him. He was a COVID kitty. So
Okay.
we got him during COVID.
He's still young.
He was a kitten.
He's still young.
We got two, and one was, they were brother and sister, and one is tiny. Like, one is like, I don't know, like 4 pounds or 5 pounds or something, like tiny. I don't know.
Oh my
Maybe it's
God.
even smaller than that. One is tiny, and then there's Momo, who is like just massive.
Oh my God.
And Momo's just like a mountain lion. He will just chase it. He'll jump up over a light switch. Like he'll, just chase that laser all over the place.
Oh,
Okay,
he's
there
so
you
cute.
So,
Good. And I plan next year, I want to come run that 112 miles.
Excellent.
I'll help
Connecticut.
crew.
Yeah, for sure. I'll see
I'll
if
crew
my
you.
friend Julia wants to come too. I'll have my friend Julia come out too.
Awesome.
Get a couple other people that want to come out and do it. So it's $112 donation, $112 that sign up.
Yeah,
It's all donation.
Yes, yeah, it's
112 entry fee is all donation.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So I have, in other words, I have the podcast pays for most of the race, but I have other people who pay a little bit. Oh, and you get here's a shirt from
Cool.
This is the route. So it starts at the
Okay.
top of the state and works its way down to here.
Oh, that would be so fun to run across the state.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's fun.
That was the thing, is that once I saw the route, I'm like, oh, I am fucking doing that.
That's awesome, especially on trail.
Yeah. There's probably
There's a few miles of road that's just part of the trail, but
Yeah.
the last 4 miles are road, but you end up going through a park at the end, and it's quiet road, and it's usually at a time of night.
Well, it's not like you're running on the streets all over town.
It does have 2 elevators though, too. That's the one thing, because the one thing it does is the course goes through a train station. So
Interesting.
you walk
So
in,
you go an elevator to go up, get on, cross to the other
yes,
side.
you pop up,
Crazy.
and then you walk across a catwalk, and then you get on the other elevator and put it down.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
It's
I
so
love
weird.
it.
My company
It's
put in
funky.
the elevators. I work for a company called Kone, and we put in the elevators, and it so happens that the trail goes through the train station.
That's crazy.
So I made that. It has the steepest vert of any ultra out there. It's straight up, literally.
Yeah, exactly. That's your claim to fame right there. I love it.
It is. So
Cool.